turned Megyn Kelly against Israel. After October 7th, she was a voice of compassion and of reason, a supporter, a true supporter. And all of a sudden, something happened. What happened there? So let me give you a perspective. But first, we have in this week's Torah portion, the spies go to Israel to check out how to best conquer the land that the Jews are meant to go into very soon. And they come back with a terrible report. Okay, the question is, the report was true. What they said was that the people living there are strong, they're mighty, fortified cities. There's no way we're going to be able to conquer them. But isn't that what they were asked to do? They were asked to go and see the land and to report back. So they did. The answer to it we might be able to get and glean from the first Rashi in this Torah portion. Rashi says the following. The story that precedes the story of the spies is the story of Miriam. Miriam spoke negatively, let's say, about Moshe to Aaron, to his brother, and she was then smitten with leprosy for 7 days. That's the last story of the previous portion. And so Rashi says that Miriam was smitten for iskei diba, for involvement in negative talk. And these wicked people didn't learn a lesson. What's the connection? She spoke about her brother. This is a story about what the land is like. What's the relationship between these two stories? So the explanation is like this. Miriam had an issue with Moshe. That it seems like Moshe was separated from his wife. And so what does she do? She calls a dinner party with her brother. Aaron is there as well. And she lays it into Moshe at that time. What she should have done is, as a good sister who loved her brother, go to Moshe privately and tell Moshe, what's going on? What is it that I hear? What is the story? But she didn't do that. She made a big tumult out of it. And that's what she did. That's what she did wrong. The same thing happened with the spies. Yes, what they saw was real. As a matter of fact, it was quite, even though, they were good people before they were sent. They only sent the best. Moshe would have sent the best. But they saw something that was supernatural in a negative way. So they were used to seeing miracles, but here they were seeing miracles in a negative way. What do you mean? First of all, there were funerals all over. The people were dying in numbers that were abnormal, beyond nature. So they're saying, this is a Elech Secheles Ishvel. This place buries its people. People just die here. It's not a place for us to go. In other words, it's the opposite. It's not natural. It was beyond nature in the negative. That was one thing. And then the other thing they saw was giants who preceded the flood. These are giants that existed prior to the flood. I'm not going to go into the whole story now. So here they say, hold on, God wanted to destroy everyone, all the evildoers with the flood. And these guys were able to overcome God's decree. God wasn't able to, or didn't want to, whatever it was, destroy these people, these giants. So they say, hold on a second. This is already beyond nature. This is beyond nature in a negative way. Who says, even though we saw so many miracles of God before, that in this environment, in Israel, which is meant to be in a natural way, our relationship with it, that's why he's sending spies. Because otherwise, if it's just miraculous, why send spies altogether? But you want to do it naturally. Well, we can't do it naturally. And as a matter of fact, it's worse than that. So what was wrong with what they said? The answer is they should have come to Moshe and said, you sent us. This is what we've seen. This is the report. But instead, they made a press conference. And they talk to all of the Jewish people. And they make everyone cry and say, there's no way we can go. They were just coming in to come back and say, this is what I saw. They didn't. They came back to say, no, we cannot go into the land. And everything positive about the land, they turned into negative. Look at these fruit, amazing fruit, but they're strange. They're not normal. And this is the kind of people living there also not normal. and therefore we won't be able to conquer it. The problem was that they turned everything into a negativity, and that they made a big tumult. In other words, they turned up the volume. If your volume had to be a certain level, they were much higher, at a much greater level. Why was that? So Chassidus explains that the reason that this happened to them is because really they had something against the land. Altogether, they didn't want to go to Israel. And the basic explanation that we've given many times, because they had heaven on earth. They lived with Moshe Rabbeinu. They were everything they needed were taken care of in the desert. They didn't want to go to Israel. So what did they do? Because they didn't want to go to Israel, that negativity that they had against Israel came out in their report. So what happened was that their report was a projection of their dislike. They saw their dislike of Israel in Israel. There's an interesting idea. I heard sometimes when we have an issue with our children, do we see a problem in the children, or is it a projection of a problem in ourselves that is expressing itself in our children? How do we know? If our response to the negativity or the issue in our children, if the volume is too high, if the way we're dealing with it is beyond proportion, then it's most likely it's just the reflection of something negative in us. And it's not a projection of what is happening. It's not just looking at them. And in those cases, it's best for us to find someone else to help our children. We shouldn't be the ones doing it. So, because it's too personal. In other words, when we see something negative in someone else, are we seeing a problem that has to be solved? Or are we seeing a projection of just evil because it's a projection of the evil in us or the negative in us? Even if it's not at the same level, if it's at a lower level, but still that resonates with something that's deep in us that's no good, and therefore we don't see a problem to solve, we see bad. And that's a good test on if what we're seeing is for us to actually change and fix, or if what we're seeing is actually a mirror image on ourselves. You know, there's a story of the Rebbe Marash where two Chassidim come to him. Two Chassidim, paupers, whatever, they come into the Rebbe, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, and the Rebbe says to them, tell me what's happening in Kharkov. So one comes in, what's happening in Kharkov? Kharkov, oh, what a great city. People love each other, they help each other, they come to learn, they come to daven, and it's a wonderful place. The Rebbe gives him a coin, thank you very much. And then the next chassid comes in. He hears what his friend said and what he got. He says, I'm going to tell the Rebbe the truth. This constant fighting. Everyone is at each other's throat. No one helps each other. People come late to shul and they don't like the rabbi. They don't like the chazan, the sheikhet. It's shocking what's going on there. Okay? The Rebbe says goodbye. He says, hold on, Rebbe. You gave my friend the coin. Aren't you going to give me? The Rebbe said, you think I don't know what's going on in Kharkov? I wanted to know which Kharkov you were living in. So, similar to a story of a fellow who came to a town. He says, what are the people like town like? So the guy at the edge of the town says, what's the people in the town that you're coming from like? Oh, they're wonderful people, etc., all positive. He says, same here. Comes to the next... another guy comes and he says he wants to come into town. What's the town like? The guy says, tell me where you came from. He says, oh, terrible people. They're fighting with each other. They're no good, really bad. So it's the same here. Because we see from ourselves, we see how we see ourselves. So this brings me to Megyn Kelly. What does it say? I think what happened was we saw her as one of ours. She was one of ours. She supported us. And all of a sudden, she wouldn't criticize Tucker Carlson. And the way we responded to her was out of proportion. It wasn't responded in a nice way, in a kind way, in a way of trying to bring her on board. or realizing she's from the outside and she doesn't owe us anything. I think that's what happened. And then she got her back up and the arrogance kicked in. And from there, things just spiraled out of control. I think that was the start. It starts with not criticizing in the right way, not enlightening in the right way. And then, yes, her arrogance is what brings her to where she is now. Now, maybe it's other things as well. But I think the turn happened because of her feeling, hey, why are you attacking me? I was actually your biggest supporter. Oh yeah, you're not gonna tell me what to say and what to think. And she turned around and tried to find all kinds of ways to be anti-Israel. You know, I was in Melbourne last week and we met with someone who was not a supporter of Israel, a Jewish person, and we could have gone in and attacked. That would have been counterproductive. We had a nice conversation, a dialogue, one that they want to continue. And the reason is because we didn't go in with an attack. We said, we want to know where you're coming from. And then we could discuss. I think that is so important. When we see something that needs rectification, we need to approach it in a way that gives the other person a feeling that we respect them, we honor them, we don't think they're evil and bad, even if we don't agree with them. And if we heighten the volume, then we know, hey, we're not the ones to help in this situation. Good Shabbos.